Welcome to Lunch with EFI. It is 12:01 Eastern Time, and you guys saw in the news, daylight savings time is at risk.
Well, in Arizona, you don't have to worry about that, do you?
No, it has no effect on me. I'm interested in what everyone else thinks about it, though, while we wait for Ian to jump back on here. What do you guys, have you seen that the House took it up, it passed, but Tom Cotton is threatening to torpedo this, Jay.
Oh, why?
That's a good question. I don't know why.
I don't have a strong enough opinion. Oh, Ian has joined us. Yay, Ian. We were going to wait for you to join, and then I did my Bill O'Reilly imitation. I said, we're doing this thing live.
Well, if you've seen on the news, Massachusetts, I guess along with New England, the rest of New England and New York were experiencing the smoke from Canadian wildfires. And so I've had to move downstairs from my office because, the windows are open in there. It's unpleasant. And I was trying to use it on my phone. And the second that I received a call, that seemed to kind of boot me from the stream. So dealing with some unusual circumstances.
What you're saying is something about gremlins or something is what I heard. But
well, also, I may have to go in at some point to assist with the twins in the next room. But this is a family show, and so if I need to do that,
that's right.
We're not going to address our fertility crisis unless we're okay with people.
That's exactly right.
Podcasting and helping out with their twins. That's
right.
Where it is.
That's right.
Well, usually, Matt, there's that thing about Chesterson's fence, right, where you say, well, you better figure out why it was there before you get rid of it. But I can't see any case for day. No one's ever explained to me why it's even done. I can't see how we would miss it. And personally, as an Arizonan, I'm proud to say that we made the gold line stand against this stupid idea and waiting for the rest of you to catch up.
I'm proud to say that I have no opinion whatsoever about it.
It doesn't bother you at all or affect you in any way, really, that you have to change your clocks twice a year?
So what? The power goes out, you have to reset your clocks too. I don't get too upset about that.
We would have, I think, like 8:15 sunrises here in the winter, if we go that route, and that's pretty tough. I think I'm in the camp of actually just adopt standard time.
A lot of people are saying that, and I can sympathize with that.
I do remember when we were living in Boston, coming out of class at 3:30 in the afternoon to darkness, and that was pretty bleak.
It is depressing, but it beats driving the kids to school while it's pitch black out, I think.
No, that just shows that y'all are living in the wrong part of the country.
Probably.
It's not our fault.
Don't worry, Matt. Almost everyone is correcting that error. It's just a matter of time. Someone will have to turn out the lights and close the door.
That's right. Come on down.
Mm-hmm.
We still got plenty of room.
The marginal tax rate in Massachusetts will have to be more than 100%.
Ian's in it for the long haul.
Until you've experienced the terrific smoke that we have here in the summer, you really can't judge.
Well, what's the Mark Twain joke that there are two seasons in Boston, winter and 4th of July?
It's about right.
Yeah. I actually, he went around and he told that joke using different places. He was good at that routine. He had a lot of failed investments, and so he needed to make money. So he would do these lecture tours, and people didn't have TV, so they would very happily pay to go see someone, say interesting things and tell some jokes. It was a big deal.
It is truer in Boston than it is for other places, though. Like if you look at a weather map in April, and the entire country is warm except Boston. Yeah, our spring is brutal.
Well, you're in the Arctic Circle. What do you expect?
That's what I get.
But, so now that we've talked about the weather,
almost as thrilling as last week's discussion about orange juice.
Oh yeah, we did have.
That was more interesting to me than.
Wait, are we going to lose? Maybe our AFC minders are going to turn off. Don't turn it off. You never know when we might talk about you. I'm just saying, you might come up at any time, so you better stay tuned in.
It's true. Well, and so we should start off with Ian. You're first up. So you have a report out.
I do. I released a mini report through EFI that's critical of a newly announced research lab in North Carolina that's going to be dedicated to evaluating charter schools generally, and seems to have a focus, at least based on the launch announcement and comments, on virtual schools specifically. And as someone who has a PhD, I guess, one might expect that I would be in the camp of saying more research and more information is good. But actually that's not what I'm going to say here. I'm going to say that this is probably a waste of everyone's time and money, and that this is more research that's probably bad. So
you mean McDonald's encourages the Research Institute about ill-fitting Burger King crowns? Is that we need to really explore the pain caused by the restrictive blood flow restriction of the Burger King crowns?
It's something like that. I mean, look, researchers understandably are always going to insist that they're doing important work that deserves public subsidy, but just because they insist that that's true doesn't make it true.
But it's also basically, if you were simply trying to evaluate an entire sector, right, you would look at the entire sector. But if you have some kind of big focus on virtual, then that suggests that the charter school establishment basically has it in for virtuals. They hate it because the virtuals have the ability to compete with them no matter where they are, because they're not location specific. The kind of geographic protection against competition that charter schools otherwise enjoy doesn't exist for potential competition from virtual schools. So they hate them.
Yeah.
And look, there's no bigger monopolist than a business person. Every business person is secretly a monopolist, right? They would love to figure out how to make illegitimate or illegal their competitors.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's not a shock, but it doesn't serve the customer.
I think to clarify a little bit about why I think this is stupid and a waste of time. First of all, how long has the charter sector been around at this point? Is it 30 years, 35 years?
35, 36, yeah.
So, and how many evaluations of charter schools have been done at this point? That number is probably either in the hundreds or thousands. So at some point,
we really need to explore whether electrification of cities, it has a lot of implications, but we really have it in for the battery storage people. We hate those people. Those are, think of it, there could be explosions of battery storage. There are all sorts of problems.
What was the move to asphalt from cobblestone really the right move? Was that what we should have done?
Actually, some people have preserved their cobblestone, and they have very high land values where they do. So perhaps it's advantageous.
Well, maybe we should go back. Maybe city streets should be. I'm curious, Ian. Why the name? Why? What's with this name, the Charter Research Lab? Was that an intentional?
Well, it's a lab. It's a lab, so it's scientific. We can imagine there's people putting on white coats and doing science.
Right, with beakers and potions.
But really, I mean, we're talking about more than 3 decades of research on the effectiveness of charter schools, which, look, the conclusion of it in aggregate is probably something like charter schools, in terms of academic outcomes, perform similarly to district schools. It's the reality of it. But
right, and at modest cost, at no extra cost to taxpayers, actually seemingly less cost, right?
Right.
I mean,
and now millions or tens of millions of students enrolled in charter schools.
But they're wrong. Can't you explain to them how they're mistaken?
I think we've probably moved beyond the proof of concept stage where we can accept that this is a reality of the public education landscape in America. In my mind, there's no benefit at this point to these ongoing evaluations. Now, I have bones to pick with the virtual ones specifically because I'm a little bit like you, Jay, in that, I can't help but call BS when I see it. And the evaluations of the virtual schools are particularly bullshitty.
Well, so we basically really hate, not only do we hate competitors, we also hate schools that focus on serving kids with challenges because they have worse outcomes. And that makes us very upset.
There's like a kind of gross irony there, though. The districts push these kids out intentionally.
Yep.
They do. I mean, that's a very blunt way to say it, but alternative schools and virtual schools, and by the way, private schools who receive students that are placed privately by district schools, because that happens as well, kids with IEPs.
Right.
That happens all the time. And then the same districts that push the kids out criticize those schools for underperforming, and they should get less money. They should
exactly right.
Be more heavily regulated. They should yada yada yada.
Look, I was on the committee that approved the first round of charter schools in Texas, and there was a limited number for general charter schools, but there was an unlimited number for schools that focused on disadvantaged populations. There was a two pool system at that time, but we were carefully instructed by TEA officials to give extra weight in rating the applicants for the general pool. We were supposed to give advantage to schools that focused on disadvantaged populations, so they had the advantage in getting those limited number of spots. So basically, what you ended up with in the early days were a lot of schools that focused on adjudicated youth, pregnant teens. Those were the big things.
Because they didn't want them in the general population.
We did have, as it turns, KIPP was in that early round there, Yes Academy. But that's because people thought that all minority kids have to be disadvantaged. But that's not true, right? As it turns out, there are a lot of upwardly mobile, low-income and minority families. And KIPP and other of the big chain charters have figured out how to serve those populations. That's Robert Pondicio's whole book about Success Academy, is that they figured out how to identify the population among low-income minorities who are upwardly mobile and willing to do the extra difficult things that Success Academy was demanding of them.
Yep.
And that's not a bad thing. It's great that upwardly mobile people have access to these high quality options. And I think Robert's book made that clear also. But at the same time, we shouldn't think that every school that serves, brown and black kids is a school that is focusing on kids who are disadvantaged. I mean, they might be advantaged by their upward mobility, while other kids who are not black or brown, who are not low income, might still have lots of problems. Drug addiction, being bullied for being the gay kid at school. These things are real challenges that drive kids out of brick and mortar schools and into virtual charters at a high rate. And Ian and I did a study on this where we found these kinds of challenges were particularly common among virtual charter kids.
And I mean, for listeners who might not know, the way that this works and the issue with it is that usually these evaluations are utilizing matching techniques where they're just relying on standard administrative data, things like prior achievement, ethnicity, eligibility for free or reduced lunch, and matching students in virtual schools to supposed counterparts in the brick and mortar sector, and then comparing their achievement and saying,
virtual twins. It's better if you hype it up.
They're virtual, right? With our lab coat,
they're virtually twins. Like your twins are virtually twins.
So with they're claiming the difference in the outcomes. It's got to be that's got to be the school effect that they're capturing. Never mind the fact that they're coming in there because they were getting bullied or they have social emotional disturbances or their family is frequently relocating, or they're homeless. And so
these kinds of challenges that are not necessarily captured by their prior test scores, because these sometimes are problems that develop.
Right.
So last year the kid was not addicted to drugs and did okay on the test, and this year the kid is.
Right.
And now, so the challenge is a newly developed challenge that the matching studies can't match on because they have no information about it. We did survey parents and asked them why they were choosing these schools, and they told us about the reasons, which included some positive reasons, like my kid is very accelerated and is bored at school, some positive selection, but also a lot of negative selection, like my kid is, fell in with a bad crowd. My kid's being bullied for being different. And these are things that aren't constant and would not be captured in a prior test score, and is also not captured by the race or free lunch eligibility of the student.
That's right. And so doing more studies like this that, are committing the same mistakes and not, heeding the warning that you were making there, you're not even building knowledge, right? You're actually obfuscating the research base. And you can see this too with like transgender medicine, right? Where the evaluations are like this simple pre-post evaluation where they ask the child about their mental health before they go on hormones and after. And for reasons we don't have to get into, it's beyond worthless, right? But they'll just do that same thing over and over again and then claim, well, look at the robust evidence base we have on that, which I think is
done a lot of good here. Yeah.
Which I think is probably the right transition to say there is a lot of bad research in medicine.
Well, actually, the connecting theme here is you might think more research is necessarily good, but it isn't, right? More research is good if it's good research. So the problem here is among medical students, there's been an arms race in producing research. So I have a new report out from Do No Harm this week on this topic, where I track the trend in publications by medical student authors. And it was quite rare a couple decades ago, and then it spikes up so that there are more than, recently there was more than 900 medical student authored publications in a year. And that's just using a search in a database called PubMed and searching for articles where medical student was listed in the author affiliations. That doesn't necessarily capture every medical student authored research out there, but it's a good proxy for the trend. And the trend is that it was very, very, very low, and then it spikes up. What caused the spike up in the volume of research? It wasn't that medical students suddenly realized that they could contribute to our knowledge base in advanced science. It was because they really, really want to get into competitive residencies. They want to get into medical residencies for surgery, for dermatology, things that are very lucrative. And there are a lot of applicants for those spots. And in the past, people would compete for those spots by having really good grades in med school and having high test scores on the step 1, which is kind of the initial standardized test for medical students covering their initial coursework that they're supposed to learn. And the problem is that we've taken that information away. Medical schools have gone pass-fail on their preclinical coursework. And the step 1 test has been turned into a pass-fail test without telling people their continuous score. And so you can't stand out anymore by doing well in your classes and mastering the content knowledge of being a good doctor. Instead, you have to figure out some other way to stand out. So one of the big ways for people to stand out is by having publications listed on their resume, so that when they apply for a medical residency, they count them up like Trigger the horse, 1, 2, 3. And apparently for surgery, you need like 30 some publications. So you really need like a ton of them. Well, they don't have to be good. You just need them, and you need a lot of them. And so what's the easiest high volume thing to do when you're a medical student for producing research, when you've had no formal instruction or virtually no formal instruction in how to produce research? Well, you produce politicized junk. So I don't know if you want to put up, Matt, the first image I sent you with the spike up. I don't know if you have that handy.
Yes, I have it here.
So first, just to show you kind of the big spike up in the number of studies. I could do it for you without the image. It looks like this.
Kind of like this.
Yeah. So you see this like huge spike up in med student authored research, and then the second image is basically what kind of research they're producing, and basically it's politicized junk at a high rate. Not all of it. Some of it's good, but a very low percentage. And this again is an imperfect proxy, which is I just searched for certain key woke terms in the title and abstract of these articles, and the black dots that zigzag on the left hand side that's all unreliable because that's out of like 10 articles, so it's a super low number there fluctuating around. But around 2010, as you saw in the last graph, the number begins to get big, and the percentage of those articles that have these woke buzzwords begins to spike up too. And it spikes up at a much more rapid clip than the overall research literature in medicine. Sure, there's an overall trend of an increase in attention to these issues in medical research, but it's not nearly as steep as the increase in med student research. So it's not only that we have more med student research, we have more junky med student research. And another way of looking at this is are med students the first author on their research? So the junkiness of it is masked a little bit by the fact that professors are trying to help their students compete for these medical residencies. So they're increasingly throwing them on as junior authors on the research projects they're doing. And in exchange, they get, labor, they get someone to get their dry cleaning and stuff, right? You remember that, Matt? That was the thing thing that professors did. You're aware of this fact.
I'm aware of that and a lot more. Yes.
So anyway, we know that med students, I was able to measure the extent to which med students are just being thrown on as junior authors by looking at the percentage of these articles that have a med student as the first author. I also collected information on the average author position. Are they the first, second, third, fourth, and so on? And what you see is that on average, they move from being between the first and second author to being between the second and third author. So all of this is to say that the stuff that the students, and then also I do look at the relative citation ratio, which is a measure of the influence of how often their work is cited. And the stuff that the students author as the first author, it has is much lower RCR score than the stuff where they're thrown on as a junior author. Okay. And so if we adjusted for their author position, we'd see that the students are not contributing very much. Now, why does all this matter? All of it matters because of three big things. First, it's polluting the medical literature, right? So the more that journals are filled with junk, that's politicized junk that the med students are authoring, the more that we have bad information circulating in the medical literature, and that corrupts the research process. Second, it's harming the training of these students by diverting their energy away from their coursework and their clinical rotations, where they actually learn how to be effective doctors, and towards this other thing that they're no good at and it has no value on average, just so they can compete to get into medical residency. So it's undermining their medical training. And third, it's ultimately harming patient care, because by corrupting the research literature and by undermining the quality of their training, we're making healthcare worse on average. And none of this serves public interest. This is all basically a rational response to making the grading pass-fail and the step one pass-fail. And we could fix this. There's actually a relatively easy fix here. The fix is we could go back to letter grades for their preclinical coursework so that they could stand out by mastering that content knowledge. And we could also, shift towards a continuous score again for the step one so that they could brag about what a high score they got when they apply for a medical residency. There's a reason why we did this shift, though. And there's a reason why it's going to be a little bit hard to go back. And the reason is ultimately a DEI reason. The DEI reason is that by going pass-fail on both the grades and the step one test, we mask differences in performance.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we have this conscious strategy of increasing the number of doctors who have certain identities, regardless of the preparation of those medical students, then we also say, well, we also want to have those same medical students in the most lucrative residencies like surgery, right? Then we have to figure out ways of making it so they can compete and not be disadvantaged in that competition by taking away information about their grades, taking away information about their performance on standardized tests, and having people compete on some other basis. Now, mind you, this often does not promote equity. It certainly doesn't promote quality, but it also doesn't promote equity because the most advantaged students are also often the most sophisticated at gaming these systems and figuring out how to generate the largest volume of junk research, right? They're the best networked, they're savvy about the system. So we don't even get the equity result that we're trying to manipulate here.
Jay, we get to read about appendicitis in post-colonial Wiccan lesbians now. This is...
So, in the report I wrote for Do No Harm, I profiled 3 articles just to give you a taste of what this looks like. So there is one article about the experiences of indigenous students in medical school. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and it has first it has all the incredibly obnoxious, annoying jargon and abuse of the English language, minoritize and things like that, things that aren't words, but fine. But the methodology of it is they confess it's not a systematic review, but it's not really much of a review at all. They basically read 13 studies out of a pool of 200 that they initially identified, without telling you how they went from 200 down to the 13. Somehow they picked those 13, they read them, then they summarize it for you. Oh, and by the way, they never list what those 13 are, so you couldn't even replicate that thing. If you wanted to, you can't read them yourself and say, I think they accurately described those studies, or they did not accurately describe those studies, because they don't cite them and they don't list them. Okay,
And
so it's
my favorite.
Here's what I thought.
Yeah,
And we can imagine
research.
we can imagine that those 13 studies are probably garbage, right? So they're literally just piling shit on shit.
The lead med student author on that study is now in a surgery residency. Smart, right?
Some of my I remember during undergrad, some of my favorite journal articles to read were quote monograms. Where it's just somebody's whimsical thoughts that they jotted down on a Saturday and submitted to the journal.
Jack Andy deep thoughts.
Yes, yeah. Actually, I would have really enjoyed reading those on it as a part of my because I'm a big fan of Jack Andy. But no, that's the kind of thing. It's this is absolutely useless. It helps nobody.
Let me be clear. There are some medical students who have a proclivity towards doing medical research, or who are simultaneously doing an MD and a PhD program where they are in fact receiving formal training in how to become researchers.
But they're not writing articles like the one that you're referring
to. But their participation in research is good. And so I don't want to say that every medical student authored publication is junk, but the problem is that the incentive system is giving us an increased volume and an increased junky volume.
Yeah, Jay, if we
diluting the high quality stuff.
If we drafted Rick Hess to start going to these conferences, what percentage of them would be, junk.
Ian's been at some of these the specialty conferences. I don't know if you can give us a feeling for what you
It's a
saw.
lot. I mean, a couple of years ago, I went to the Association of American Medical Colleges annual meeting. The AAMC is, the organization that basically oversees academic medicine in the United States. And I would say during each block, there were probably like, I don't know, 8 or 10 sessions, and there was like always like a DEI session every hour.
A or multiple?
At least a, and I think sometimes probably multiple.
I mean, I can tell you, it's interesting if you go to the, and yeah, I'll say I'm naming names here, but if you go to the National Association for Public Charter Schools annual meeting, whatever that's called, I can't remember what it's called, but if you go there, I mean, there are multiple sessions in each block. Probably 20 to 25% of the sessions have some DEI jargon in the name or the description. And so, I mean, I get the impression that this is, especially, at the conferences and in, academic conferences specifically, it's probably like not an insignificant share of the number of sessions have that kind of stuff that not just included, but as the main point.
Well, I mean, again, some of this is resume padding. You can list, lines on your application for the medical residency that includes presentations at conferences. And often those are put together and it's actually listed as a publication because the abstracts are published as a compendium, somewhere, and people will list that as a publication, and it will show up in PubMed, the database that I was searching, as a publication as well. So yes, that we have some reason to think that the scholarly or medical specialty association conferences are facilitating this corruption.
How much of these publications do you think happen that they get let through by the editors for publication out of fear that if they turn it down, like, because there's some of obviously that they'll say, I agree with this. This is good. We should publish it because it furthers the virtues of DEI. There's some of that, but then how much of it is, well, I have to let a certain number of these through, or otherwise I'm going to be seen as anti-DEI.
I mean, honestly, a lot of these are lower tier journals. I mean, although there is woke junk that gets into high tier too, but that tends to look a little more sophisticated. This really junky stuff that the students are writing is often in a lower tier, and what they're just trying to pad resume with lines. And anyone who's had to evaluate professors in universities know that counting the number of things is the main form of evaluation. It's trigger the horse, right? For those of you too young to know, Roy Rogers had a horse named Trigger, and Trigger could count, and he counted by moving his hoof. And this was a great trick that obviously someone was giving the signal to his what was Roy Rogers? Was it Silver? What was the name of it?
Hi-Ho Silver.
Hi-Ho Silver.
Yeah, Silver was the name of his, right? Is that right?
I think so.
Okay. So he would move his hoof because he was trained to move his hoof, and so I think I don't know. Roy Rogers would like point his finger and say 1, 2, and Trigger would move it. That's how you evaluate research production and the quality of our professors. And I was involved in that process, and then we're aware of this problem, so we try to like rank order some journals, and then we count how many are in this tier and how many are in that tier. But it's an endless gaming system, right? Where almost everyone wants to game it. I mean, no one really wants to turn the screws on themselves and their friends. So we try to figure out how to make it all look okay without it having to be really that stringent. In the same way that test-based accountability for public schools can never really, they won't turn the vice on themselves. They're just not going to do it, right? In the same way, these kind of dumb, crude numeric ways of evaluating faculty or of evaluating medical student applicants for residencies, they're all eminently gameable. And these people are smart and ambitious enough to game.
Yeah.
So I'm hungry for dessert.
Yeah. Let's get some dessert.
All right. Well, now that Jay's destroyed our confidence in medical research, I can show you.
Why should this week be different from any other one?
Why should it be any different? Right. So, every once in a while you come across something and you kind of say to yourself, look at that. Right. And Matt, if you'll put this up, I recently had this experience when I came across this trend line for polling data from Gallup that's basically asking people, are you somewhat dissatisfied with the public education system? Or alternatively, are you somewhat satisfied or satisfied?
And this is adult population, not parents, right?
Yes, I think that's right.
So the thing that people always say in response is, well, if you ask people to evaluate their own kid's school, if you ask parents to evaluate their own kid's school, they actually report really high levels of satisfaction. Mm-hmm. And therefore, this is the result of anti-school propaganda, manipulating people with no direct experience into believing that things are worse than they really are.
And even within that caveat, I mean, clearly there's an interesting trend here. So why is that sentiment intensifying?
Right. Well, also we can tell a story of how people without their kids at a school have less information and therefore are less reliable judges. But we also might think that the people with kids at a school might not be the most reliable judges of that school, because what are they going to do? Tell you, I send my kid there and it stinks.
Well, but
I feed my kid food and it's horrible.
We actually have that as well, right? So I'll get back to this chart in a second, but Ed Choice has asked that question about, like, basically amongst parents with school-age children, right? If you had your druthers, right, what kind of school would you send your child to? And what you see there is about half the people that are sending their kid to district schools report wanting to do something else, right? So,
but they're not going to tell you my kid is being tortured. That they won't do.
No, they won't tell you that, but they will tell you that, like, we can infer from this that the level of satisfaction amongst district parents is pretty low, right? You said, if you had other options, what would you want to do? And they're like, something else, right? Most
this is like the election results in the Soviet Union. Had 90% for 99 point something percent for our dear leader. But judging by how people vote with their feet seems much more informative.
Right.
The existence of barbed wire in East Germany seems to say a lot more about what people think about it than the results of the election.
And how insecure the people working for school districts are about, the passage of a charter school or a private choice law, right? Like, they seem to have it as an article of faith that people go screaming out the doors. Well, that seems to be more the case now than it was in the past. I mean, what is striking to me about this chart is that as recently as 2019, there were slightly more people either satisfied or somewhat satisfied than somewhat dissatisfied or dissatisfied. But boy, does that look different now, right? Dissatisfaction goes from 47%, or the aggregate of the dissatisfaction measures, from 47 to 62, and meanwhile the satisfaction rate drops from 51 to 35.
It's also important that we include, by the way, non-parents in this measure, because after all, they're taxpayers.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So they have a right to an opinion about all this because they're expected to pay for it.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
We can't just say, shut up and turn over the money. Right? They're
Although
allowed to have an opinion about whether they think they're getting something good in exchange for their tax money.
but that actually is the implicit message when, and I've had people try to make this argument to me, that it's good that there's low voter turnout rates in school district elections, because that means that the people who are really involved and really understand the issues of school districts will, be the ones doing the voting and electing. Right.
That's why we have the elections between midnight and 1 a.m. in the middle of a snowstorm.
Exactly. So, I mean, saying yes, we off-cycle elections are good because it reduces voter turnout, and we can leave it to the experts, right? Basically, is another way of saying
The most interested parties.
Shut up and send the money. Right? Yeah.
I like how expert is taken as equivalent of the most interested parties, right? The most interested parties are the ones who show up to vote in an obscure election.
Right.
But the most interested parties aren't necessarily the most expert. They're just the most interested, right? They have the most riding on it.
I look at this chart and all I can say is I hope they enjoyed their $190 billion, because it cost them a lot. Right?
You're talking ESRA funds, right?
Well,
the entire money.
The COVID debacle as a whole has seemed to have had a very, very bad impact on public confidence in public education.
Higher ed too. Nitu Arnold has a tweet out today showing Gallup results very similar, except that it's actually a much steeper decline of confidence in higher ed. And it, over a long period of time now, not longer than this, but instead of being flat and then diverging, it's actually sloping down.
Yeah.
And lately, a lack of confidence from Democrats, self-identified Democrats. Unsure exactly.
Really?
Well, they're they're annoyed too. Universities can't seem to please their Republican critics, and now they're not pleasing their Democratic supporters either.
Hey, the skepticism is becoming bipartisan, right? Like those of us right of center can imitate John McClane and say, "Welcome to the party, pal."
We need
cultural education you can get here.
That's right. We need some good diehard memes every once in a while. We got to throw them up on the screen. Yeah. This may just be my perception. I've talked about it a lot. It seems to come up a lot in school closures. And obviously this, these two things are connected. I don't know to what extent, but we're talking about ESSER money. We're talking about people taking their kids and voting with their feet and dissatisfaction. The NCES data will come out and make it all clear at some point, but it sure looks to me right now like those numbers are going to increase. And I'm talking about school closures. Yeah. I believe, at least the way that it looks to me right now, that we're going to see that number tick up and up and up.
If you're in a sector that depends heavily or entirely on public subsidy, seems to me that you should pay a lot of attention to whether people think well of your sector, right? And it's kind of odd that has not been a matter of primary attention, either by the leaders of higher education or the leaders of K-12 public education. Both are receiving giant public subsidy, and the whole thing collapses without government money. And yet they don't seem to attend to the taxpayers who are paying the bills.
Right.
I mean, there's centuries of getting away with it.
Right, I know, but they're going to learn the hard way. But it'll correct and stabilize at a good. I mean, it's not a catastrophe. Like, everything won't collapse. What we'll get is a correction, which will be healthy, and it's already starting.
Why do you got to be such a downer, Jay? Why not collapse?
We're not going to. Things don't collapse. I mean, you know, America is a very robust society with very robust political systems that are gradual, moderate, but ultimately fairly sensible.
I can tell you that I agree with all of that. I will tell you this, though, to all the district school administrators out there at the district level and at the school level,
all of them watching this podcast,
for all zero of them watching this podcast, some free advice. So, for what it's worth, figure out your finances quickly, soon, because the enrollment decline is real. It's not going away, and school closures. I've been paying maybe too much attention to this, but it's a real thing that people are going to have to deal with, like, sooner than later.
Such wise discussion, but frankly, I would tune in to lunch with EFI just to see Ian's cat and twins. You know, like,
it was hard to tell the light I was in. I was holding one of them for a while.
I saw. I was going to comment, but
now we have this appearance. I did a family-friendly show. I wasn't kidding.
No, I know. Like, I don't know. I said to my wife this morning, scrolling through X, I showed her some funny dog video or something. I said that's why I'm on social media. Social media. It's just for funny pet videos. That's
right.
I don't have a cat, but I'm gonna get a taxidermized one just so that I can.
You don't need to do either. You could just get on social media and just like watch.
No, I mean for the show. I mean for here. I'll bring in my cat into frame and.
Frozen Mr. Big
to boost our ratings so that we can increase our monetization of this show.
We'll continue to split our increasing proceeds. Hey, I got a couple of comments here. These are good and interesting.
Someone's watching?
Yeah, someone's watching.
Okay.
So on this note, confidence in public ed was going down long before that. The first voucher program, 1990. Sentiment was building. Agreed. Some clarification from earlier in the show. Silver was the Long Ranger's horse. So
Alan, what was Roy Rogers' horse?
A trigger, right?
Trigger. Oh, I even said it.
Yeah, you were right. You were right. Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
And then final comment here. Public ed funding is protected by political muscle. Public ed. What happens to that budget when the political power drops?
Well, and power is ultimately related to votes. We do live in a democratic republic. It's really hard to pull it over on voters forever, you know?
Yep. It's true. Well, this has been a filling lunch. Thank you to all of our one public ed administrator viewers and the other 5 that all work for AFC. We appreciate you joining us today. and
just because we didn't talk about AFC this week doesn't mean that we won't.
Oh, it's coming
at any time when you least expect it.
No, this has been good. So thank you to the 3 of you. We appreciate it. It's always good. Fun conversation. More cats next time, Ian. More twins.
It'll boost our ratings.
I'll make sure I get both twins and both. I have 2 cats. I'll get both cats in there next time too.
Okay, good. Yeah, we got to do better than this week. Although this week was great. Thanks, guys.
All right.
Bye.